Today is a good day to be an IndyCar fan, especially if you're an IndyCar fan who wants more oval tracks on the schedule. And as I if you check the community tab, you see that I reported this rumor weeks ago that Iowa is coming back to the schedule as a doubleheader, and Rahal Letterman Lanigan is going to have a third car full-time next year, all thanks to the Hy-Vee supermarket chain. Here are the details. So the Hy-Vee Deals 250 and the Hy-Vee Salute to Farmers 300 are going to be the two races. Roger Penske announced today that they are going to be on NBC, the big network, two of the 13 races that IndyCar will have on that network next season. As I said, Hy-Vee will sponsor a third full-time Rahal car. The driver is not yet announced, but they did show a few liveries that the team will be running. Ironically enough, Mountain Dew and Cheetos and all those big sponsors that everybody talked about last year will not be on the car. That's a choice by Hy-Vee, believe it or not, because I think they want more attention on their brand itself. So, doubleheader in Iowa. And now I do realize that a lot of things I've said in the past have been negative towards doubleheaders, and I still stand by a lot of that. But if you're going to have a doubleheader, especially a doubleheader on an oval, I think Iowa is the place to do it, because Iowa is a track that is going to produce a good show on both nights. And when you're on network television with an oval track, you want to do that. I mean, you look back to the pandemic, the beginning of the pandemic, where IndyCar came back at Texas Motor Speedway. The TV rating was excellent. Primetime racing on an oval. Coming back, I think it was a Saturday night. This is probably what's going to happen at Iowa, by the way. But I think the rating could have been better if the racing had been better. So we do know that Iowa, multiple lane track. I mean, this is part of the reason I was so upset when they announced that Iowa was going away next year, because of all the tracks that IndyCar races on, oval track-wise, there aren't a lot of tracks that have two grooves the whole way around the track. Iowa is that way. Another thing that Iowa does that is so great is that, for whatever reason, Firestone seems to always bring a really good compound, a really racy compound to the track, where drivers have to manage tires. And your tire choice means a whole hell of a lot. I mean, I go back to looking at Ryan Hunter-Reay, I think it was 2014, where he just blew past everybody on a restart because he chose to go get tires no one else did. A little bit like a stock car race, but hey, it was exciting nonetheless. So the fact that Hy-Vee stepped up to the plate in the state of Iowa, the governor was there at this announcement, as well as the mayor of Newton, Iowa. So you had all the politicians there, really rolled out the red carpet. Hy-Vee doing a great job as a sponsor. And I thought about this because there aren't a lot of sponsors that are aiming specifically at the race fan. And I think a lot of what we don't like about racing these days is because of the fact that racing in a lot of ways caters, at least big league racing, caters to business partners a lot more than they do business to consumer partners. When you have business to business stuff, everything becomes very insular. You don't have a whole lot of promotion. You don't have a lot of fan outreach, and you see TV numbers start to drop off. I think there's a big reason for that. But when you have companies like Hy-Vee that are sponsoring races not only because they like racing or because they like the people that they're working with, then certainly I think Hy-Vee likes like Bobby Rahal and the Rahal Letterman team. I think they also want to actually sell groceries. So they actually promote. They actually put standees in their stores. They are pretty active on social media. They're active, obviously, finding races in key markets to sponsor and support. So I think this is only a good thing, because the more sponsors we have that are B2C rather than B2B, I think you're going to see an increase in the promotion and visibility of racing. So this is fantastic. And I know that Hy-Vee isn't everywhere, unfortunately, but maybe this will help them tremendously and they'll expand to other markets. But again, I think this is just a really awesome thing. Another thing that Hy-Vee is doing is allowing the number 45 Rahal Letterman Lanigan car to become full-time next year. Now, I think it was Racer Magazine that had an article about that team expanding potentially, and they said specifically that if the car becomes fully funded, they're only wanting to do that if they can choose the driver to drive that car. Now, I think that's interesting because I think when we saw Christian Lundgaard really perform very well at the Indianapolis Motor Speedway, I think a lot of people jumped onto him being the guy who's going to be in that car full-time next year. And I do wonder about that because of the times we've seen the 45 on the track this year, it was the only time that Hy-Vee was not the primary sponsor. I have a sneaking suspicion, and this is just a suspicion, I've heard nothing to confirm this, but I have a sneaking suspicion that Hy-Vee is going to want a corn-fed American driver in the seat. So I wonder, no matter how fast Christian Lundgaard was, is he going to be the full-time driver next year? We know that they tested Oliver Askew at Barber. He very well could be in the car before the end of the season as a tryout race. We also obviously know about Santino Ferrucci and the fact that he's the only time he was outside the top 10 this year when he's been in that car was at Nashville when he finished 11th. So not exactly a bad result produced by Santino whatsoever in that car. So I wonder, the 45 car is a total wild card, I think, in this silly season, because in reality it's a pretty good seat. As we've seen, it's done very well for being a part-time car. So, and again, there's so many drivers out there looking for work right now and especially with Bobby Rahal being able to choose the driver, I think it could be anybody. But again, I think my bet right now would be on an American driver. So I think it's probably maybe Askew, maybe Ferrucci, and then maybe on the absolutely outside possibility, you would see like a Christian Lundgaard in there. But I'm sure that would take some finagling to get Hy-Vee to agree to having a non-American driver. But on the whole, this is just a great day for the sport. It has to be said. You have a committed sponsor. You have a race returning that the fans wanted. I mean, that was a big point that Roger Penske made, is like, hey, we're looking out for you guys, the fans. We haven't really heard much of that since Randy Bernard left IndyCar. So it's nice to hear Roger acknowledge the fans and realize that, hey, we wanted oval races. We want this series to be diverse. And while it seems like right now there's not going to be a major amount of changes to the 2022 schedule, it's going to be very similar to 2019, which is not a terrible thing by any stretch of the imagination. I think we can live with it. But yeah, they're listening. So that's good news. And an extra car on the grid again. I mean, there's like Juncos is going full-time next year. There's an extra Rahal car. There's a possibility of a full-time McLaren car, third full-time. But at the very least, that car will be seen, partial season like it was this year. So, man, it's all good. It's all good, man. It's crazy. But you may have clicked on this video for a different reason. And you may have been surprised why you didn't see something at the beginning of this video that maybe you expected. Well, folks, it's now time. It's a Kyle Larson video! So this all started innocently enough. Robin Miller wrote a very Robin Miller piece. I shared this on my community tab too. So if you're not looking at my community tab, if you're not subscribed, you definitely should be. But on my community tab, I shared this article written by Robin Miller, and it was Robin's plea to Roger Penske, Rick Hendrick, and everybody involved at IndyCar to get Kyle Larson into the Indianapolis 500 on the heels of his Knoxville Nationals win. And, it's one of those things that you go, oh, that'd be a great what if. Well, then Roger Penske at the BC 39 said this.
Maybe I can find a 500 driver out here tonight. What do you think? You give me a good name, will you? You got a name for me?
And then he was pressed on it today by Always Race Day on Twitter. And Roger said this about Kyle Larson.
Knowing Larson, he's just one of the most great drivers we've seen in many decades.
So you don't really confirm probably whether you're in talks with him to add him to a seat in one of your cars?
Well, I'm getting into hiring drivers for sure right now. That's not mine. Yeah. But I just wanted to kid the fans that there must be somebody here we can get a drive, right?
So is Kyle Larson a legitimate Indy 500 entry contender for next year? I would love, first of all, opinion, I would love for it to happen. I want it to happen. I think it would be extremely exciting. And Jeff Gordon, I think, said in the Robin Miller article, like, he's this generation's Mario Andretti. I think I called him this generation's AJ Foyt a little while ago. Mario, AJ. When you're throwing around those comparisons, chances are that guy probably should try the Indy 500. Now, will he do it, especially next year? That's the question, I think, that is a lot harder to answer because you have a lot of moving factors, right? You have to find him a ride, whether it's with Team Penske or whether it's not. You have to have Rick Hendrick agree to it. Obviously, that's a major factor, especially considering the fact that ultimately Rick Hendrick is paying Kyle Larson a lot of money and doesn't currently have a ton of sponsorship paying for Kyle Larson to be there. Kyle Larson is there to win NASCAR Cup races and a NASCAR Cup Championship. So if he doesn't win the Cup Championship this year, that does make me wonder if Rick Hendrick is going to let him go do stuff like the Indy 500. Now, certainly, I think it's worth noting that Rick Hendrick has been a lot more lackadaisical about letting his drivers in particular, go out and do things that they want to do. In fact, I'm about to go watch the second day of the BC39, and I think there's 2 or 3 Hendrick Motorsports drivers running there right now. So certainly, Rick Hendrick has changed his stance a little bit on whether drivers can or cannot, his drivers in particular, can and cannot go do other things. Now, certainly, the Indy 500 is a very, very high-profile event, and it's worth noting as well that the Indy 500 is a very dangerous event. Now, is it less dangerous than it used to be? Perhaps, but at the same time, you're doing an awful lot of risk-taking, not only during practice, not only during qualifying when you're reaching speeds potentially well over 240 miles per hour. The race itself is crazy. 33 drivers, especially with the competition level that we have today, potentially going to have 40 cars going for 33 spots. You're not going to have a lot of scrubs out there, so you're going to have a lot of cars that are just absolutely tooth and nail thinking that they can win the race. You don't have field fillers anymore. So if Kyle Larson, let's say, for example, does get a 5th Penske car, let's say Roger does what he did last year for Peretta Autosport, puts together a Hendrick Motorsports is the 5? No, the 5 isn't available. The Hendrick Motorsports 55 with Team Penske, something like that. They put that together for Kyle Larson. First of all, there's no guarantee he's going to make the race. I know, Kyle Larson, a generational talent, probably would, but if you think about it, that 5th Penske car last year qualified 33rd, and had there been one more car that had legitimate speed, who knows what would have happened. Hell, Will Power could have gone home for all we know. So Kyle Larson would first have to make the race, and then afterwards he would have to challenge the best in the business at the Indianapolis 500. He would have to beat the Elio Castroneves of the world, the Alexander Rossi's, the Scott Dixons, the Colton Hertas, all those guys. Could he do it? I think absolutely, but I think it would be an uphill challenge. Maybe his greatest challenge of his career thus far to do it. But I also think that's why we all want to see it happen. We want to see Kyle Larson challenged. We want to see him go up absolutely against these really difficult challenges, because ultimately, back in the day, that's what Mario, what AJ, what all those drivers that we love so much and we kind of put on a pedestal used to do. So I really hope it happens. At this point, I would not be super confident that it will happen, but what I am super confident in is that the Indianapolis 500 under Roger Penske, and really the IndyCar series, is going, man, it's going in the right direction, isn't it? Because the fact that this possibility even exists, the fact that, even if Roger Penske's just teasing, and he probably is at this point, but you also look at Iowa and the fact that the fans said, hey, we want Iowa back, or we want ovals on the schedule. And there was a way found to make it happen. If the fans were saying, hey, we want Kyle Larson in the Indy 500, and they make their voices loud enough, who knows what might happen. And this is the thing too, and I don't mean to be morbid when I say this, but Roger Penske, we know he's getting up there in age. How many more Indy 500s is he going to get to, really actively create? What is his legacy going to be? Do you think he's going to have an off year? Do you think he wants to ever have an off year again after 2020? I don't think so. I think he's going to try to fill the place, and I think the best way to do that is hype the hell out of it. And how do you hype the hell out of it? You get Kyle Larson, you get Romain Grosjean, you get Alex Albon, and you get the drivers who have made IndyCar so exciting on the full-time side of things. You look at Pato O'Ward, you look at Rinus VeeKay, you look at Colton Herta, Alex Palou, and the legendary IndyCar drivers that have been there for years, Tony Kanaan, Scott Dixon, Helio Castroneves. You really have all the elements that were there in the past. You have the crossover drivers, Jimmy Johnson, for example. You have the drivers who might cherry pick, possibly Kyle Larson. You have drivers coming over from Formula One, Romain Grosjean, who have huge fan followings in the international market. Man, I guess we're in a golden era. Let's enjoy it. Let's appreciate it. I'll see you in the next video. We're going to be at Gateway this weekend. It's going to be a little bit different. It's a one-day show. There's some NASCAR COVID restrictions that are going to make things a little bit more difficult access-wise, but we should still have the media bullpen, so I'll be able to talk to drivers there. I'm going to try to get as many interesting interviews for you guys as I can at that, and then hopefully throughout the rest of the weekend be producing some great content as well. Thank you guys so much for watching. This has been David Land on YouTube. Subscribe for more motorsport content, and I will see you in the next video.